Thank you so much for having time to speak to Rwanda TV.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Let's just take a look at the annual tourism conference that we're having here in Kigali. What should we expect?
Well, you know, the African Travel Association, which is now a part of the Corporate Council on Africa since the end of 2015, traditionally had a conference every year where it would bring together tour operators and travel agents from the US, even from other places outside of Africa, to Africa, so that there was an opportunity to showcase what Africa has to offer in the tourism sector. And so this is the first World Tourism Conference since ATA became a part of the Corporate Council on Africa. And what we're going to expect is that we're starting out, we're very honored to have President Kagame, who will open up the conference. We also have the Secretary General of UNCTAD, and UNCTAD recently released a report on tourism in Africa. And the main point it made two main points that were interesting to me. One is to talk about how tourism touches a lot of different sectors and is a driver of economic growth across the whole value chain of tourism. So, you know, people think about hotels, but they don't think about all the people who sell into the hotels. They don't think about the people, especially women, who make those products that people then take home with them, tourists buy and take back. So there's a whole industry that supports tourism. But the other thing that the report talks about is that more tourism in Africa is now being driven by Africans. There's a huge uptick in growth in intra-African tourism. And I actually did not know that. So I think one of the things that we will see come out of the conference is a better understanding of how tourism is really functioning in Africa today. There are new platforms, it's Expedia and Facebook and Instagram and Travel Advisor, TripAdvisor. You know, there are all these new things and new ways that people actually do tourism. And then there's new interest in tourism. Everyone used to come to Africa for safaris. But everybody that's coming to Africa now is not coming for safaris. You get young people. I ran into a group of young people who were coming here to do biking. And so
rafting.
Yes, rafting or all sorts of other things that are not. You get people who come here and have, there's a group called Tastemakers, and they put together travelers with people here on the ground who give them an experience of what it's really like to engage with Africans. That's very popular and rising now. So people are not just interested in coming, staying in a hotel, even though there are many new beautiful hotels here, including the Radisson, right, in Kigali. I mean, you have a number of new hotels here. When I was last here for the World Economic Forum, in fact, the Radisson Blu wasn't even open yet. And your conference center, which is just gorgeous, wasn't open yet. This place here wasn't open yet. So there's a lot happening here in Rwanda, and I think that much more that can happen as well.
Rwanda's tourism sector recorded more than $400 million revenue earnings last year, up from $378 million in 2015. With the expansion of new touristic attractions, including Mukura Gishwati National Park, a cultural village in Kigali City, the completion of the state-of-art hospitality facilities such as Kigali Convention Center and Marriott Hotel, Rwanda projects to fetch $444 million from tourism sector next year. According to the Rwanda Development Board, meetings, incentives, events and conferences are expected to inject $64 million into Rwanda's economy in 2017, up from $47 million generated in 2016.
We're looking at a very positive year. This year, MICE is expected to generate $64 million. Compared to $47 million we generated in 2016. So that is a huge growth. We're looking at a 25% increase, and we feel that this is a key sector that is continue to contribute to the economic development of the country. We're looking at tourism employment, we're looking at export, but we're also looking at branding the country. When we're hosting all these international events here, there's image changing in the international market. More people get to know the country, and they want to refer to the country to be able to bring more events to the country.
The African continent fared well over 15 years in the tourism industry. In 2014 alone, Africa received a total of 65.3 million international tourists who visited the continent's attractions and earned $43.6 billion revenue. The increase is far bigger compared to 17.4 million tourists in 1990, and this was according to the World Tourism Organization. At a time when the African continent is standing out to drive its own growth, Business Digest went further to ask the Corporate Council President, who also served as the assistant of the U.S. Trade Representative for Africa before joining CCA, on the current stand on the U.S.-Africa business relations.
I just want to move away from the conference and touch on the Corporate Council on Africa. You just became the president. Let's take a look at some of the plans you have, especially for the African continent.
Well, so first of all, this is a real opportunity for me to be the new CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa. And I believe that one of the reasons that the board of directors chose me is because I have a long history of working on trade and investment and business engagement. I was the assistant U.S. trade representative for Africa in the U.S. government for many years. And so when I left government, I had 36 years of government experience. I've traveled to many countries across the continent. I've lost track of how many. I've been to many factories in a number of the countries and worked on programs and initiatives that were put in place to support trade and more investment between the U.S. and Africa. So coming to CCA now, where we have member companies, we have large ones that everybody knows, GE, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Procter & Gamble, Visa, Caterpillar. We have a lot of major U.S. companies, but more than half of our membership are also small and medium-sized companies. So I like the idea. And then the other thing is we have African companies that are members of CCA. So Zenith Bank from Nigeria, Dangote Industries is a member of CCA. Mr. Dangote is on my board, as a matter of fact. So what we're doing is creating that platform and opportunity to bring together U.S. businesses and African businesses, big businesses and small businesses, to see how we can really promote more business engagement, how we can promote more investment, more of those deals that you were talking about.
I want to touch on something. Having worked with the U.S. investors and also widely traveled the rest of the continent, what are some of the sectors that you feel are so interesting, especially for the trade between the two? Oh,
there's so many. So obviously tourism is one that has a lot of opportunities, and as I said before, not just for hotels, but I was just in a meeting where we had, MasterCard was there and Expedia was there and the Marriott hotels were there, TripAdvisor was there. We have a lot of interest in the U.S. in that sector. So tourism obviously is one, and I have to mention it because we're having this conference. But we also have a lot of businesses that are involved in infrastructure development here. There are those in the energy sector. And not just oil and gas. Obviously, there's a lot of investment in oil and gas, but in power generation, agribusiness is another sector that has huge potential here on the continent. And what we're finding is that more companies are coming here. And last but not least, the development of Africa's industrial base is really of interest to a lot of U.S. companies that source their products like footwear and apparel from all around the world. And more companies, U.S. companies, are looking at Africa as the place to come and source those products from. So there's a lot of opportunity and new investments that are coming into the continent because of Africa's industrialization.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.